Setting up a course in standard-based grading can be a little bit daunting, especially your first time. I've now set up 9 different courses with standards-based grading, so I've gotten kind of a little bit of a routine in that. I'm going to explain how I do it, and I hope it's helpful. Let's get started. So I just want to remind you that this is a video series going over elements of standard-based grading. I encourage you to check out the other videos in this series, linked in the description, as well as the huge pool of resources that we have now for alternate grading, and that's linked in the description as well. In this video, I'm going to look at 2 different courses as examples on how I've set up standard-based grading and some of the different details involved in these types of courses. There's going to be Discrete Mathematics and Calculus 1. The basic idea, though, of standard-based grading is I'm going to have a list of competencies, roughly 20 to 30 different ideas that I think are core to the class, that if a student understands those concepts, then they deserve a good grade in the course. These can be things like the definition of the derivative, limits and continuity, etc. And a lot of times it follows the section heads of your textbook. If you kind of want to know my motivation for standard-based grading, the first video in the series covers that, but let's just say, a quick bullet point version of that is that I want my grades to measure learning accurately, and I feel like traditional grading does not, and standard-based grading helps with that. So in standard-based grading, a student needs to show competency on a learning target. And in my class, I require that students show competency on a given learning target twice, sometime throughout the semester, in order to get credit for that target. Now, what does that look like? How do they do that? They do it mostly through quizzes. I give a lot of in-class quizzes, and I label them based on the target name. So for example, L4, we'll say we have an L4 quiz coming up, and students know exactly what that is based on what's in the syllabus. And their grades are either a check or an X, or in some very few cases, a check with a minus sign. Okay, now a check means, yes, you got it. You understood the concept, you get 1 check. An X means you didn't get it, but that's okay, remember, we can try again later. A check minus means you almost got it. There's some small, sometimes insignificant detail that you left out or overlooked, and if they can explain it to me when I hand it out to them, if they explain to me the error, I'll bump it up to a full check. All right, so they have to get 2 checks per target in order to show competency in that particular target. Again, we do that with quizzes, and then I do give exams, but my exams are basically just a big collection of quizzes. I'll probably have 8 quizzes on one day, and they don't have to do them all, they just do the ones they need to. This eliminates a lot of test anxiety, as well as gives a lot of opportunity just to keep attempting these targets. Now, they can request quizzes outside of class. Now, you need to be careful of this, because if it's no holds bar, it can be chaotic. So what I do is I allow students to take 1 free quiz a week. And on top of that, they can request additional quizzes, but those will cost a token. I give everybody 2 tokens at the beginning of the semester. So let's say week 2 of the semester, they could take 3 quizzes if they want, the free one, and then use their 2 tokens. But what I like about the token system is that I can reward them where I used to give partial credit. I can reward them with a token. I can help reinforce good behavior with a token, and I'm not just giving them fluff points. I'm giving them extra opportunities to show competency. And it helps build community, it helps build vision, and it rewards hard work. So to continue that discussion, we're going to use one of my classes as an example on how to set up the structure of your course. Now, with standards-based grading, we first want a list of targets or a list of competencies. These are the things that I want my students to know. So for Calculus 1, which is the example I'm going to use here, I have this short list of things that I feel like these are the most important topics. Now, my Calculus 1 class saves integration for Calculus 2, so this is the list of things that I want. And I recommend having somewhere between 15 to 30 targets. 30 is kind of on the larger end. I have 21 here. Then I also want to arrange these targets into some subcategories, which typically follow the chapter breakdown of a textbook. Mine don't exactly do that, but you can see like I have L targets for limits, applications, which I usually say is AP, not just A, graphs, etc. And so if I say I'm going to have an L3 quiz, my students know by cross-referencing the syllabus, and we talk about it a lot in class, the L3 would be limits at infinity. They know exactly what to expect. And they can cross-reference this also with their own grade report. Now I noticed that some of these targets are also more difficult than others. So showing mastery of related rates is a lot more complicated than showing mastery of, let's say, the chain rule. So I also broke these down into what I call the basic targets and advanced targets. So my B targets and my A targets. So in the syllabus, they have a grade that they need to get for B targets and another grade they need to get for their A targets. So now I have two grade categories. What else do I want to consider? So I definitely have my A targets, which are my advanced. I have 6 of those. I have the 15 B targets. I also include something called C targets, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but those are complementary targets. That's kind of more like project-based, things outside just the textbook index that I would like for them to see in a course. We have homework. We do get a homework grade. We have a 1-check grade. I include the 1-check grade because I've had students in the past that have not had competency on a lot of targets, but they've almost been there. They've had 1 check on a bunch of things. So I think that deserves something. And so the 1-check grade helps with that. I also include a final exam. And just one quick note, I actually give 2 final exams. I give one that's like a traditional exam it's shorter than normal, but it's comprehensive, and I grade it with a traditional system. I do it this way for a couple of reasons. One is because I've had some students who got all the competencies they needed out of the way very early, and then I'm not really sure at the end of the semester they still understand what they wanted to, and so I just wanted to have some sort of way of checking in on that. Also, it's a data point for me to make sure that standards-based grading really is meeting the targets that I want compared to traditional grading. But the second final exam is basically 1 quiz for every single target in the course. And now they only need to take the ones they need, but it gives them a last day, a last option to really try to get some of those 1 checks up to a 2 check. And so students appreciate that. The grading on that is a lot easier because no one's doing the whole exam unless they're really going for a Hail Mary pass right at the end. All right, so now how do these targets actually translate to a grade? Well, I put in the syllabus a table like this that shows how to get an A in the A targets category, for example. You need to get competency out of 4 out of the 6. That's only 67%, but remember these are the advanced targets, and we're talking about true mastery, not just they did it right on a test, they show it twice, right? So for B targets, for example, they need to have competency on 80% of those B targets, and it kind of goes down from there. And you can notice the difference between an A and a B really can come down to 1 check. So that final exam can be very helpful on getting those last points in right at the end. The C targets, notice to say 18, so I'll talk in a little bit more detail about those later. That's not 18 checks or 18 competencies. These are more project-based, so they're more rubric-based, so this is like a total of 18 points that you could accumulate on the C targets. Homework, so the way I handle my homework is I give a written assignment, and students, work it, they submit it back to me. I give feedback. If it's good, I give a check on it. If it's not, if there's errors or it's incomplete, a lot of times students will just turn in half-completed assignments because they're just trying to get whatever points they can. I give it right back to them with a big X with the annotations on what they need to fix. They can resubmit it, and when I look at it again for resubmission, I can give them a check. So when it says 75% homework grade to get an A, what that means is 75% of the homework checked off. That's a lot harder than it sounds. And the reason I like to do this is because sometimes homework can sound like busy work if students are just copying off the internet or just submitting it half completed. And the true intention of homework, and I tell them this over and over and over, is that's where you practice to get the competency you need to show competency. And so the homework, I really want it to be worth something. And so the students that work hard and get that 75% completion rate deserve an A. And then the 1 check grade I mentioned, so if you get 19 1 checks, that's worth an A in that particular category. So let me show you what the students see from this. Okay, so I send out grade reports that look something like this. This one's actually from my syllabus. This is an example grade report that they would get. So this would be what someone sees at the end of the semester. During the semester, it's kind of, we fill it out as we go. So this student, if you notice in the A targets, they got a bunch of 2s and they got a 1. The 2 represents 2 check marks. I do it that way because I found out the hard way that the check mark macro does not translate to all email clients very well. In particular, iPhones were getting umlauts. And finally, at the end of the semester before the final exam, my first semester of doing this, someone asked me what the umlauts were for in their grade report. No one had told me that the check marks weren't showing up, so I was very disappointed. So I changed that just to make it simple to numerics. They understand that this means 2 check marks, 1 check mark, etc. Here I have the number of temps that they took for each one of these targets. You say here in their C targets, they did C1, they got 1 point for that, and not much else. They got 3 points in C5. So we'll see how that translates to their grade. Okay, they got a 70% on the exam and 65% of their homework completed. All right, so I filter all this information through the table we have here. And so this particular student, according to our table, had 5 out of 6 A targets, that's an A. 10 out of 15 of the B targets, that's a C, according to our table. And you can see down from there. Now, my first semester doing this, I would look at this information and try to figure out what kind of grade does this person deserve. They got an A and 2 things, an F on 1 and 3 C's. Should that be a C? And so I included, as you can see here, weights for these different categories to show which ones should be weighted more. And then I needed a way to convert this to some sort of numeric. So what I came up with is I'm going to translate these grades into a GPA scale and then award their grade based on that according to the weight. So for example, this student had an A that's worth 4 points times 15% for the A targets. And we can keep going down this list. And when you add all this up, you get a 2.5, which is a C, which I think is a fair grade for this student. This is detailed in the syllabus with the example report. I go over it over and over. I include the table in the grade report that gets sent out. And I even show them what if the semester ended this day, this is what your grade would be. Now, it can be kind of scary early on, I should say, because there's not a lot of room for people to get competency early on. So it looks like they have a lot of Fs. And I repeatedly tell them, just calm down. You can do this. And the image I give them is one of those fundraisers where you have, like, we have this threshold that we need to get to, and we just are filling up with a Sharpie all the way up to the threshold. And we just haven't gotten to that threshold yet. So just keep doing stuff. It will pay off. The ones that have been with me more than one semester know that from day one. They're very relaxed about it. But the ones who have not done it, it's their first time through, get a little nervous at first, but they start figuring it out and they adapt pretty quickly. Okay, I want to show you quickly how I set up another one of my courses, Discrete Mathematics, because it has some other things involved. In particular, Discrete Math has a lot of proof writing. Proof writing is a little bit more nuanced than just taking a derivative. So I have to include something a little bit different. So for my Discrete Math course, I have these particular targets, A, B, C, D. In this course, A represents the proof techniques. B is basics, C is complementary, D is definitions. And discrete definitions is a very important concept that a lot of young students want to overlook. So I make some short quizzes going over definitions from the chapter. Notice it's only worth 5%, and I only make them check that off once to show competency, which is detailed in the syllabus. Everything else is pretty much the same, except proof writing, again, shouldn't be just check or X because it's a little bit more nuanced. So in discrete math, I include this in my syllabus here, where for most exercises, the basic targets and definitions, it'll be either a check, an X, or a check minus. But for proof writing, for the A targets, they have to score a 3 or higher on this pretty simple grading rubric. A 4 would be flawless. Not many students get flawless proofs right off the bat. Some do, though. And so they get a 4 for that. 3 is mostly correct, but with some minor errors. I didn't feel like I should ticky-tack just kind of small errors that I can just point out that they'll figure out over time. And then below that, 2 is like mostly correct, but the communication's not right, or 1 or 0. They have to try again. They'll get an X on that. That can be frustrating for students at first, but that poor communication is important when we're learning how to communicate mathematics. And so it's something that they need to work on, and they do understand that. Okay, now I'd like to cycle back a little bit to these complementary targets and what that means. So these are the complementary targets I use in Calculus 1. I have 6 of them. I give an early checklist. Now this is only worth 1 point, and it's something super simple. It's just a checklist that I hand out that says something like, get the textbook, read the syllabus. We use Microsoft Teams to communicate, so make sure you join the team. And a few other short things like that. If they can just check that off and bring it back to me, I give them 1 point. And really that's just kind of an onboarding process to make sure everyone's set up correctly, that has the resources they need to be successful in the course, because I'm surprised at how many students don't bother to do all of those simple things. So I just wanted to make sure we get that out of the way. The Eyes of Faith paper, that's kind of more of an institutional thing. It's more philosophy based, and we have some philosophy of math papers. Nothing too heavy, but they read through it and kind of write a response with that. That's worth 5 points based on a rubric that I put in my LMS, which is Canvas. We have 3 mathematical labs that are all worth 3 points. And then the MFT quizzes, I don't need to get it too detailed into that, but that's a short multiple choice quiz that I give 1 per exam that helps with our department's academic outlook assessments for accreditation. I don't actually grade these quizzes. What I do is for each question they get correct, I give them a token. And then to make it a little bit fun, I tell them if someone gets all 3 questions correct on a quiz, I'll give everybody in the room a token. They get really excited about that, and every once in a while someone will get all 3 correct, and so the whole room feels like they have found their champion. So it takes kind of something that can be a little bit stressful and makes it a little bit more fun. And students have responded pretty well to this as well. So this is a lot of information I've given you about how to set up a course with standards-based grading. This is how I do it. Not everybody does that the same way. Don't forget this is part of a series, so I'm going to show you also how to set up your gradebook and how to get that working with your LMS. If you have questions on anything, please let me know. If you have suggestions, I'm open to that as well. We have a lot of resources in the description, and I hope to see you next time. I hope this is useful. Take care.